Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. The educator's role, provocateur and safety net. So, if you are a teacher, professor, or corporate trainer, what do you do with all this? You can't just force someone to have a transformative experience. You can't say, "Okay, class, open your books to page 50 and have an epiphany." But you can set the stage. You can till the soil. Create the dilemma. Teachers often feel like their job is to make learning easy. Transformative learning theory suggests that sometimes your job is to make learning uncomfortable. You have to be a bit of a provocateur. You assign the reading that contradicts the textbook. You facilitate the role play that forces a student to walk in someone else's shoes. You ask the question that has no easy answer. You are trying to trigger that cognitive dissonance. 2. Foster critical reflection. You have to teach students how to reflect. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. Journaling is a huge tool here, asking students to write not just about what they learned, but how they reacted to it emotionally and intellectually. Using the 5 whys technique to drill down to premise reflection. 3. Manage the discourse. This is the hardest part. When you rattle people's cages, things get heated. People get defensive. A good educator has to manage the room. You have to ensure that the rational discourse doesn't turn into a shouting match. You have to model active listening. You have to create an environment where it is safe to be wrong and safe to change your mind. Meziro often talked about the educator acting as a co-learner, not just an authority figure. You are in the trenches with them. Support the emotional journey. Remember phase 2, the fear, anger, and shame? A teacher has to be ready for that. If a student lashes out or shuts down, you have to recognize it as a symptom of the transformation, not just bad behavior. You need to provide the support structure, the holding environment, that allows them to fall apart a little bit so they can put themselves back together. Application in the real world. Let's bring this down to earth with a couple of examples. The history classroom. Imagine a college history class in the United States. A student comes in with a very specific, patriotic narrative of American history that they learned in elementary school. The George Washington never told a lie version. The professor introduces primary source documents from Native American perspectives or enslaved people that contradict that narrative. Dilemma. The student is confused and angry. Are you saying America is bad? Reflection. The student has to grapple with the idea that history is written by the victors. They have to reflect on why they feel so defensive about their national identity. Transformation. They move from a simplistic "my country is perfect" view to a complex "my country has done great and terrible things" view. They become a more nuanced, critical thinker. Corporate diversity training. This is a hotbed for potential transformative learning. You have a manager who believes they are colorblind and treats everyone exactly the same. They believe this is the fairest way to be. Dilemma. They receive 360-degree feedback that their minority staff feel unheard and undervalued. The manager is shocked. But I treat everyone the same. Reflection. They have to confront the premise that equal treatment, treating everyone the same, is not the same as equity, giving people what they need. They have to examine their own privilege. Transformation. They shift their management style to be culturally responsive. They change their habit of mind. Regarding fairness, critiques and expansions. The evolution of the theory. As influential as Meziro is, he isn't without his critics. And honestly, the critiques make the theory better. 1. Too rational. The biggest knock on Meziro is that he was too focused on the brain. He was a cognitive guy. Critics like Robert Boyd and John Dirks argued that transformation is also deeply spiritual, emotional, and intuitive. They talk about soul work. They argue that sometimes transformation doesn't happen through rational discourse, but through art, music, symbols, and dreams. Meziro eventually conceded some ground here, admitting that feelings play a bigger role, but he stuck to his guns, that critical reflection is key. 2. What about social action? Another major figure in this space is Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator. Freire and Meziro are often mentioned in the same breath, but they had different focuses. Meziro focused on individual transformation. Freire focused on social transformation. Critics argued that Meziro's theory was too navel-gazing. It is great if you change your mind, But does it change the world? Does it fight oppression? Later in his career, Meziro acknowledged this connection. He agreed that personal transformation often leads to social action. Once you see the matrix, you want to fix it. If you realize your habit of mind was sexist, you don't just stop telling sexist jokes. You might start fighting for equal pay. 3. The context matters. Others have pointed out that Meziro's theory feels very Western and individualistic. In many cultures, learning is a communal activity, not a solitary journey of self-discovery. The idea of autonomy being the ultimate goal is a very American/European concept. Educators applying this globally have to be careful not to impose this value system where it doesn't fit. A liminal space. One concept that has been added to the conversation around Meziro is the idea of liminality. Liminal comes from the Latin word for threshold. It's the hallway between the two rooms. When you are in the middle of a transformative learning experience, you are in a liminal space. You have let go of the old self, but you haven't quite grabbed onto the new self yet. You are in free fall. This space is incredibly uncomfortable. It feels like being lost in the woods, but it is also where the potential lies. Educators need to understand that when a student seems confused, stuck, or frustrated, they might be hanging out in the liminal space. We shouldn't rush them. We shouldn't try to fix it immediately. Sometimes you have to let them sit in a discomfort because that is where the growth is cooking. It's like a caterpillar in a cocoon. It's messy in there. The caterpillar literally dissolves into goo before becoming a butterfly. But you can't rush the process without damaging the outcome. Why this matters now? So, why are we talking about a theory from the 1970s in the 2020s? Because we are living in a time of massive polarization and rapid change. We have access to more information than any humans in history, yet we seem more stuck in our bubbles than ever. We have algorithms that feed us information that confirms what we already believe, confirmation bias, effectively protecting us from disorienting dilemmas. We are wearing our sunglasses, and the internet is just making the tint darker. Transformative learning theory is the antidote to the echo chamber. It gives us a framework for how to listen to people we disagree with. It teaches us that changing our minds isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of growth. It reminds us that adulthood isn't a destination where we stop learning. It's a continuous process of refining our worldview. For educators, it raises the bar. It challenges us to move beyond job training or test prep. It asks us to consider the human being in front of us. Are we helping them become more autonomous thinkers? Are we helping them navigate a complex world with nuance? Meziro's transformative learning theory isn't a magic wand. You can't wave it over a classroom and produce enlightened beings. It is messy, difficult, and sometimes painful work. It requires courage from the student to face their demons, and patience from the educator to guide them through the fire. But when it works, it is the whole 9 yards. It is the difference between a student who memorizes a fact and a student who changes their life. It is the difference between a person who blindly follows tradition and a person who chooses their own path with eyes wide open. In the end, Meziro taught us that we are all prisoners of our own history, but we hold the key to the cell. That key is critical reflection. It's the ability to step back, look at our own mind, and say, I can choose to see this differently. That is true freedom. And isn't that what education is supposed to be all about? To wrap this up, let's go back to that bucket analogy. Informational learning fills the bucket. Transformative learning? It changes the shape of the bucket. It might even poke a few holes in it to let the light shine through. It's harder, it's scarier, but it is the only way we truly move forward. Whether you are teaching algebra, art history, or automotive repair, there is room for transformation. You just have to be willing to turn on the lights and let things get a little disoriented.